Welcome to, we don't know yet what we're going to call this. I'm playing around with Star-Crossed, Star-Kissed, Blair Kerkhoff on my left, Sam Mellinger on my right. I'm Vahe Gregorian. We're trying to get this new format off the ground. Blair, Sam, any thoughts on what we might call this?
No. I like, you got good ideas. Star-Crossed is good. Yeah, I can go with any of them.
Sam, you always have an opinion.
Three idiots.
Okay,
Yeah.
that might...
Two men and Sam.
3 idiots with a video.
Well, I think we discussed that this is what we're going to do when this sort of thing happens. Anyway, we're here actually a little more serious, not much more serious, but a little more serious concept. We're going to talk about a few events either of the day or of the week or topics that might be in the news. And one thing we've had on our mind as we came into this one was just the idea of what Kansas's dominance of the Big 12 actually means, whether it's actually bad that the Jayhawks seem to be, for the conference that is, that the Jayhawks seem to be on the way to their 11th straight title. Sam, what are your thoughts about that?
I'm starting to think that it is. I never did before this year, and it's just KU isn't as good as they have been most years, and I think that you can make the case that this is, assuming they win an 11th, which is just a ridiculous number, but if they win an 11th straight title, I think you can make the argument that this would be like the 8th best team in that run. And I also think that this is the deepest and the best that the Big 12 has been in a long time. And if even in that context, KU has at least a share of it all but clinched halfway through, I just think it's really, it just becomes too easy for people to say, yeah, they win the league every year, but look what league they're in. And I've always thought it's true that if they were in the ACC, they wouldn't have the streak, whatever. But, Kentucky doesn't have, 10 going on 11 SEC championships and things like that. But there's something about this year with KU being a little bit down compared to most years and the Big 12 being up and the race being all but over. I am starting to think that it's a bad look for the league.
Blair, what do you think the implications of it are?
Well, this has become a kind of a popular topic because the Big 12 is the #1 RPI conference, and I don't think any of us believe that, like compared to the ACC and the top of the ACC, the Big 12 is the best conference in college basketball. I think when you stack up Virginia, Duke, Louisville, North Carolina, Notre Dame against the top 5 in the Big 12, ACC is better. But because the Big 12 is better at the bottom and the middle, and it's a smaller conference, they're the #1 RPI. Therefore, is it really the strongest league in the country? And I don't think it is. I think the NCAA tournament will bear that out. But I also don't think that there's a cause and effect here. I don't think that historically the Big 12 has been bad or can't get teams to the Final Four other than Kansas because Kansas has been good the entire time. I just think that's the way the game has broken for the Big 12. They've had many opportunities to get to the Final Four in the last decade while Kansas has been on this run. We think of teams like Baylor a couple times and K-State into that regional final in Salt Lake back in 2010. Texas with LaMarcus Aldridge, that group got to the Elite Eight. They get to the Elite Eight, they just can't take that next step and get to the Final Four, except for Kansas in the title year and then in 2012.
Yeah, it makes me think of something I hadn't thought of before, but how much is it at the point now where we can only measure what a conference really is all about by what it does in the tournament? And if so, if that's true, how much is that? How many teams you get to a Final Four, or how many teams win 1 or 2 games? What's your overall record? How do we measure how good a conference is?
I think the way that most people measure it is NCAA tournament success, and that's the easiest and kind of most straightforward. But I think that a conference's strength should be based on the whole league and how it is top to bottom more than just having 2 or 3 great teams. And we're getting into semantics a little bit because I think that the Big 12 judged on that standard is a better league than the ACC, but the ACC is a much tougher league to win. And maybe you don't care about the first if the second is true, and I get that. But top to bottom, if there's no bunnies, there's no layups really. No pun intended. In the Big 12 as opposed to the ACC. But my gosh, Louisville, Duke, all these great teams in the ACC makes it a tougher league to win. And they'll do better. I guess you just talked about this, but they'll probably do much better in the NCAA tournament.
Well, just because they're so top heavy, they are. Look, I don't think we have a Final Four team in the Big 12. Kansas may end up being the Final Four, but the other thing is I don't think college basketball is great this year. And we know that the game is not being played in a very entertaining way. Scoring is way down. we just talk about the unwatchability of college basketball. I think there's something to that. But given that, I'm not on the opinion that the Big 12 is built, or this league is geared toward a great postseason run. But to your point, Sam, you made a good point. I mean, it doesn't happen in any other conference, like Iowa State going to Texas Tech and losing. When the first play team is tied for first at the time goes down to the last place team and loses a game, you don't see that happening in other conferences. Right. It does speak to kind of the overall top to bottom strength of the Big 12.
Speaking of unwatchability, I almost hate to make that a transition point, but our poor Missouri Tigers, and I hadn't realized this until you pointed it out, Blair, but we're looking at almost a 50-year, 40, 50-year range where since they've encountered a streak like this, even through the chaos of the Quinn Snyder era, some of the down years that Norm had early, not down years, but mediocre years. What's the takeaway from this right now? Sam, you've been thinking about it a little bit, I know, just from some conversations we've had.
I have. I think, I'm not trying to pick on the guy because he's having some success in Tulsa, but I've always looked at this year at Mizzou as more on Frank Haith than on Kim Anderson. And I think that the important part of Missouri basketball, and there's no answer, we don't have an answer for this right now, but the important part of Missouri basketball is not, what they do tonight or what they'll do in their next game as much as it is what they're doing in the living rooms and high school gyms of the people that will, the kids that they're going to recruit to play next year and in the future. And, certainly one can have an effect on the other. It's a more attractive product when you don't lose 7 straight. But I think that's by far more important than what's going on at the top. Because I still believe, I think Kim can coach. I think he's going to do all right with the kids that he gets. It's just a matter of the quality of the kids that he's able to coach.
I think I'll just chime in real quick, Blair, before I turn it over to you. But one thought I had, and I think I mentioned something about this earlier in the season, actually after that first loss when they lost to UMKC, you look at what's going on there, they don't have the horses. I mean, they really don't. And I get why Frank Haith started off doing what he did because of what he was inheriting, a very top-heavy senior class. But I think Frank sort of kept doing that, the whole formula with getting the transfers and stuff, to the point where it kept diminishing and diminishing. And this was the year that it was all going to crash on him. And that's why Frank Haith takes a job at Tulsa instead of staying at Missouri. There's just no way around that. And the other point is that we all had conversations with a lot of different people that were either perhaps going to be considered for the job or would consider the job. And I remember talking to several, including one in particular, potential candidates who said this team is going to win 12 to 15 games this year because of what it has coming back. So to me, it's an unfortunate smudge probably on Kim's record because it's on his record, but I don't think it's in any way of his making. We'll see how it works out in the next couple of years. I'm a big believer in Kim, but no matter what, it's tough now, and this does have some impact on recruiting some way or another. Now, maybe once in a while you get the magic of I can help that team because you see this, but that's not always the case.
No, I think the other thing to look for with Missouri after the season, which is going to be a disaster, and there's just no way around it. Who stays? Who goes? I mean, do they lose some players from this team that don't want to be part of this program after this season? But I think if you're a Missouri fan, I think the emotion needs to be sadness and not anger.
Yeah, that's right. Good distinction.
It's going to be it's hard to take this season, and as you said, 50 years. It's been almost 4 or 5 decades since they've had a season quite like this. But there are reasons for it. The leading top returning scorer was Wes Clark, I think, had a handful of points last year. JW3, Jonathan Williams III was about it, basically, in terms of returning talent that they had to build around. And so we knew it was going to be a really difficult season for Missouri. It is. It's playing out that way. I hope they can win a couple of games. You hate to see them go 1-17. Having beaten LSU in the opener, the SEC opener, and not having won since. They had a great effort against Arkansas. Wes Clark missed the 2 free throws at the end. They had a nice effort against Kentucky. I was really disappointed to see them against Ole Miss.
That was the one that is most disturbing, maybe even more disturbing than that big loss at Kentucky. Because most of these games, I haven't broken down the numbers, but my goodness, most of them come down to the last minute. And they've been on the wrong side of it a few times, but at least gave you hope. But the Mississippi one, I don't know if there's anything else that we feel like is right on top of our ledger right now. Sam, I know you've always got something cooking. What's on your mind? Anything that you're going to be writing for us in the next day or two that we want to call to anybody's attention, or you want to keep that under the radar like you usually do?
Yes to the first part, no to the second. I'm not far along enough in the reporting and all of that.
All right. Blair, what are you working on?
Well, I think I'll just go back to the beginning of this podcast. I'm going to lose sleep tonight wondering what we're going to call this. You know, it's a mystery, and you know, actually, I think we should get some help. You know, some help from this, from the listeners, from the readers.
And the guy holding the tripod,
Yeah.
maybe he could help us. You're right. I'm going to lose sleep over that. Mostly, I'm going to lose sleep over whether this is actually a pilot that will never see the light of day, or in fact, you're watching this right now. So, welcome again. Thanks for watching. If you made it this far, if this made it to online, and we'll hope to do a more streamlined version next time out.